Well, it is time for us to get planted one of our sort of big main crop items for 2022. So we're kind of going to go through what we're planting, why we're planting, and just some thoughts around a very familiar garden vegetable, the tomato. Like any project, we're going to start at the beginning, and right now we are in the process of getting ready to plant. So here we are in the process of filling seed trays, getting our sort of planting buckets ready, getting seeds out, and we are making tags. So one very important thing when you're growing as many different kinds of tomatoes or any vegetable where you're growing multiples is to keep track of what is what. So we have several labels made here for the bulk of what we are planting so that we don't forget which tomato is which. So we have 10 varieties that we are trying, including several which are sort of old-time favorites for us. Going around, we'll kind of go through what we are planning to plant of each type. So the pineapple tomatoes, which are up here, we're planting 18. The Palestine, which are here, we're planting 9. The white Tomasol, which are here, we're planting 18. German pink, we're going to plant 9 because that's a test one for us.
That's a new one that came in the Canadian Seed Challenge, so
which
we're going to try
awesome.
it. We were looking for pink ones.
Tomatoes. We've got the pink Brandywine, which we're also doing 9 of, so those are the two sort of new varieties for this year. We have the old-time favorite, the Black Prince, which we're doing 9. Yellow pear-shaped tomato, which came last year in the Canadian Seed Challenge and was actually our single seed challenge that we've decided we really like. We're only doing 4 of that because that's a smaller type tomato that's very prolific. And similar with the gray sweet cherry tomato, they're a bit of a monster, but they're a productive monster, but we're only going to do 4 of them as well.
So as you can see, we've way
got
more seeds than we could possibly need.
And then the San Marzano, which is basically our main staple paste tomato, we're doing 27. The Scotias are a funny one because we're actually going to plant 2 rounds of it. So round 1 is going to be 18, and we'll probably end up doing about the same on the second round.
They are our only determinate tomato. That is why we're actually planting 2 rounds of this, because being determinate, they will not continue to produce. Once they ripen, then you pull the plant and it's done. So,
as opposed to the indeterminates that sort of keep producing.
Which keep going, and you end up with a whole bunch of green tomatoes in the fall.
Well, basically the frost kills them. So there is the 2022 tomato lineup. So here we go, the fun part of planting.
Getting to use chopsticks.
Chopsticks as our little dibbler for making the holes.
Mm-hmm. And we like to use this because it's about an inch. So that's like, because sometimes, so we get a main idea, because like this would be about half an inch, quarter of an inch, eighth of an inch. Group effort, and we have all of our tomato seeds planted. So we ended up planting 125 tomato seeds of the various kinds total, which, when you actually see them here in the small seed trays, doesn't look like a lot. That was the comment I made. But to a lot of people, 125 tomato plants probably seems like a lot, maybe even seems excessive. But we're going to kind of walk through with you why we're planting so many.
As our parents were saying that some people would find the amount of tomatoes we planted as a lot or excessive.
The truth is, it isn't.
The reason why I think how many tomatoes we planted is a good amount is because you want to always have spares. Who knows? Maybe some of them might not come up.
And the reason why I think that wasn't a highly excessive amount, I did think that it was a little crazy about how many we did plant of everything. But you never know. Something might happen and you won't be able to get them.
In 2021, we grew 148 tomato plants, which was more than what we are planting this year. Interestingly, because we did track everything that came into the house, we brought into the house 746 pounds of tomatoes. Now that doesn't include things that may have went to the chickens, etc. But that's substantial. That puts tomatoes as one of our bigger producers. And when we kind of look at what you can do with tomatoes and what tomatoes can do for you, you can really see why they are such a staple / entry plant to gardening. And even though so many people grow them, they are definitely worth taking a little bit more seriously as far as what they can do for you in food growing power.
So like Chris and the kids were saying, it seems a little bit excessive sometimes to plant so many tomatoes, but to be honest, we're actually planting less this year than we did last year. Last year, we actually planted 148 tomato plants. This year, we're down to 125. So we're scaling it back just a little bit because we've noticed we have a bit of excessive product from last year's harvest. 170 liters of tomato product really does use a lot of poundage of tomatoes. And if you've got a tomato plant that produces an average of 10 to 12 pounds of fruit, you need a lot of tomatoes to make things like ketchups and soups and sauces. Our main product that we actually produced a lot of last year was our lemony basil soup, which is a tomato-based soup, and our tomato juice. We ended up with 62 liters of tomato juice made. As you can imagine, it uses a lot of tomatoes. But this year going forward, we've got a little bit of fine tuning with some of the products that we made. We don't need as much ketchup this year because we went over the top with ketchup last year. But then there's some things like the tomato juice. We found we actually made a product that we really enjoyed and we drank a lot of it. So we want to up that a little bit, which is influencing us in our choices of tomatoes. And this is one thing we've kind of talked about a little bit in our lives, but we're actually upping things like our white Thomasulls and our pineapple tomatoes because we found by producing enough plants to be able to make something solely out of that product, we've discovered something that we maybe didn't consume a lot of has become something we really like. For example, the tomato juice, when we made that with our red tomatoes, it wasn't a family favorite. It seemed more like a tomato soup. Yet when we made it with the fruitier yellow tomatoes, it had a total different flavor that's become a smashing success. So that's something to certainly consider when you're planning out your tomato garden and what you're going to grow, is being able to harvest enough at one time from the plants of a specific variety to make something solely from that product, because you'll be surprised. All these tomatoes have attributes and qualities that, has specific flavors. And when you meld them all together, sometimes that gets lost. So it's nice to be able to have enough to make something solely out of that product. And that's why we tend to grow as many as we do. And yes, you may have extra come the end of the year. It is a great, great thing to focus on and make your selections based on what you're planning to do with those tomatoes. Make sure you've got a paste tomato. And if you're planning to make pasta sauces and barbecue sauces, make sure you've got enough of those paste tomatoes, because they do go quick when you take something that is, I'll go with my ketchup, for example. The San Marzanos, you need 12 pounds to make one recipe. And one recipe only makes you 4 250 ml jars. So that's 1 liter. So for us to have that, I have to make that 12 times for the whole year. So 12 times by 12 pounds, that's 144 pounds of tomatoes just for ketchup for our family for a year. So that puts it into perspective, just how much you need to grow to really fill that pantry.